If you're not getting everything that you want out of life, it's probably because of 5 traps that are quietly holding you back. Most people don't even notice these traps because they're too busy following advice like detach and you'll attract. But what if that mindset is actually what's keeping you stuck? I'm the co-founder and president of a 9-figure company that has analyzed over $5 billion in businesses over the last 6 years. So I spend a lot of time with some of the most successful people in the world. And let me break it to you, not one of them is detached. So in this video, I'll break down the 5 traps keeping you from success and how to beat them so that you get what you want 99% of the time. But first, let's explore the problem with detachment and what works instead. You see, detachment sounds so appealing because if you don't care, you can't lose. But the truth is, if you don't care, you also can't win. That's why the answer to getting what you want is actually to care so much that you take control over the things in your life that matter. But in today's society, people are shamed for wanting control. And that's why, without even noticing it, a lot of people start acting in ways that keep them stuck and that make them susceptible to falling into one or all of the 5 traps that we're going to dive into. Trap 1, playing the victim. Grant Cardone wrote a book that I absolutely love called Sell or Be Sold. And his point is simple. In every moment, you're either persuading or you're being persuaded. There is no neutral. And that is true in life. You are either driving an outcome or you're being driven by somebody else's agenda. You're either a survivor or you're a victim. Now, I know that you might think that that's not true, and sometimes I'm not persuading anybody. But think about it. Even in the smallest of moments, like standing in the grocery store, scrolling on your phone, or deciding what you want to watch, something is influencing you. A brand, an ad, an algorithm, a friend's opinion, a family member. You're never truly neutral. You're always either having something pull you in a direction or you're pulling yourself in a direction. And that is why detaching is so dangerous. Because when you detach, you let go of your responsibility and you become the victim of somebody else's choices, desires, and wants. So instead of building your own life and your own dreams, you end up just accepting whatever comes your way, whether that's your family's wishes, your boss's demands, society's expectations. So here's how you break it. Get attached to what you want. Start by sitting down and making a vision board. When I do this, I literally go to the store, grab a stack of magazines, business, fashion, beauty, investing, and I start ripping out all of the quotes, all of the images, all the ideas that represent the life that I want to create. I put them all on a board and I become attached to that vision because that is my vision. And what it does is it forces me to be honest about the gap between where I am and where I want to go. Because if I don't admit that there's a gap, I'm never going to put the work in to close that gap. And that's how you stop playing the victim and become the hero of your own story. If you're a business owner, the way that you articulate your vision board is through your mission, your vision, and your core values. Those 3 things have to be in place for your team to understand how do they engage with your vision? How do they make this a reality? If you want my template for how I lay out my mission, my vision, my core values in order for our organization of hundreds of team members to get aligned, you can go over to my Instagram and DM me mission and I'll send it right over. Trap 2, self-isolating. Look around. We live in the most detached generation in history and also the most anxious. Nearly 1 in 3 adults self-report that they've experienced an anxiety disorder in their lifetime. Almost 30% have been diagnosed with some form of depression, and close to 18% are dealing with that right now. That's not a coincidence. And you don't even need statistics to see it. Think about the last time that you were stressed and decided to just shut down. You ignored the call, you stayed home, you pulled back from the people who could support you. And the worst case is there is a whole group of social media influencers that talk about this winter arc, where you actually intentionally pull back from everybody in order to come out a different person. But many people don't come out a different person. They never actually come out. They just stay in a state of isolation. They stay in a state of detachment. And the challenge becomes that it can feel safe in the moment, but the more that you isolate, the worse it actually gets. Because isolation is just gasoline on the fire of anxiety and depression. And the scariest part is self-isolating just creates a downward spiral. The more you detach from others, the more powerless you feel. And the more powerless you feel, the more you detach. This convinces you that you're broken, when really you just stopped practicing responsibility. The fix isn't to run from your feelings, it's to give them a job. You see, when I feel anxious, I don't try to push it down and isolate myself. I pick one action that channels my energy into movement, into doing this. And I'll make the call that I've been avoiding. I'll send the email. I'll even just go for a run or get in the gym. Because once you train yourself to see emotion as fuel instead of a reason to hide, you actually break the cycle. That's how you stop self-isolating and you start to get your power back. I get that it is the last thing that you want to do. And I remember a time in my life where it felt so dark and so challenging that I turned to some external force, some external provider who said that a pill was going to solve my problem. Let me just tell you, a pill will not solve your problem. There is nothing actually wrong with you. But you have to take responsibility and get out of the environment that you are isolating yourself in so that you can be around the people and the things that will actually help you create your life, not make you feel like you have to detach further and further from your life. Trap 3, playing it safe. This idea of playing it safe is something that I've always struggled with because in my world, playing it safe is sharing my concerns about growth. And I will never forget one of the most dangerous times where I played it safe was by not sharing my concerns when having a partner join our business. I just sat there. Everybody else thought it was a good idea, but I saw red flag after red flag after red flag. And instead of saying anything, I just played it safe. Now fast forward a few years and in that business, that particular partner wreaked havoc. They were a terror on our business. And all of those red flags that I saw were actually indicators of what it was going to be like to work with this individual. But I played it safe and I didn't say anything. So of course, I couldn't blame anybody but myself for the consequences. Playing it safe has all sorts of different variations, and it's often just an invalidation of what you see and what you know, and not sharing those insights as quickly as possible. How can you become somebody who sees important things, takes responsibility for sharing those things, and driving some sort of conclusion or action in order to make sure that the right thing actually happens? You see, this is the opposite of detachment. Letting go of your ideas to keep the harmony isn't strength. It's actually a defense mechanism. It's that you don't want to be wrong. And saying, I don't care, feels easy because then nothing's at stake. You're not responsible. It was somebody else's job. You're not sticking your neck out. But taking control and saying, I'm responsible to make this happen, that's actually vulnerable. You could fail. You could be wrong. People could laugh at you. People could not take you seriously. It could entirely blow up in your face. But that's why it matters. I'm a control freak. That is exactly why I'm successful. Think about it. Life is a long negotiation. Whether you're getting your partner on board with the restaurant that you want to go to, leading your team through a project, or moving a customer to a purchase, you want people to move forward with you. You want to control the outcome. So how do you stop playing it safe and start taking control? You start today. And you start with one action. Pick one situation that you've been avoiding controlling. Maybe somebody in your inner circle drinks too much, or you see that your coworker skirts around the edges and isn't actually being honest about problems. How can you confront and control that situation? How do you decide the outcome in advance and then act on it? The reason most people do this is because they aren't willing to ask themselves, what fear is driving me to hold back? What is the worst case scenario that I'm secretly afraid of? Naming that fear takes away its power. Maybe your coworker, somebody that you like hanging out with, and you worry that you're going to be lonely without them. Maybe your friend who drinks too much isn't going to hang out with you any longer because they think that you're too straight-laced or you're not cool. You see, once you can see and really own the fear that you have, you can be in control of the situation. And once you see it clearly, you realize the risk of staying silent is far greater than the risk of speaking up. Trap 4, watering down your energy. I used to be so fearful that nobody would take me seriously, that I didn't have the right idea, that I didn't know what I was doing, that I would sit in a meeting or at a dinner and listen to a business idea come about and everyone would get excited and I would just sit and watch. I wouldn't participate. But after the meeting ended, I would tell my husband all of my ideas and all of my thoughts about it that I wasn't willing to share while other people were around. And he finally asked me, why don't you say anything during the meeting? Because you just create more problems for me when you change what we're doing after the fact, instead of just having this conversation because your ideas are great. And when he said this to me, I actually realized how scared I was. I didn't want my idea to be a bad idea. I didn't want to be seen. And I was so fearful that if I did have a bad idea, that people would instantly know that I was dumb. Instantly, they would know I'm stupid. Well, that's ridiculous. You're allowed to have bad ideas. You're allowed to brainstorm and create on something and think of how stupid that is. Am I expected to have a great idea every single time I'm brainstorming? Am I allowed to have dumb ideas? Of course I am. But it took him pointing out this behavior to realize that I was watering myself down in front of others instead of actually sharing my thoughts and being able to get group agreement and feedback and buy in the moment. And now I contrast that to how I show up to meetings today. I see opportunity everywhere, and I'm responsible for driving all of those opportunities forward. I'm not even remotely shy about my thoughts, my considerations, what I think could happen. I lean into it because I realize that my vantage point is my superpower. It's what I see and how I can create resources around me to make those things happen. But if I would have continued to water myself down, I would have completely destroyed my influence. And that is the problem. You see, influence is one of the most important things in life, and it's not nearly as hard to build as you might think. Because influence doesn't start with these massive moves. It starts with the energy that you bring into every single room, where you spend your time, and the boundaries that you set. You see, when your standards are clear, people either rise to meet them or they remove themselves. But when you detach, you can't set the right tone to become an influential force in people's lives because you're detached from your own life. And the shift is this. The detachment doesn't protect your influence. It actually destroys it. If you're not shaping the tone, then somebody else is always. So here's how you can build influence right now. Choose one environment that you're going to be in over the next week. You're either part of a team meeting, a family decision, or maybe it's even a social gathering. Walk in with a clear standard that you are going to set and communicate that standard with certainty. Remember, influence isn't about controlling people, it's about controlling the energy that you bring. And once you own that, people can't help but to calibrate to you. Trap 5, abandoning society. This last trap is the most dangerous of all, abandoning society. You see, detachment doesn't just hold you back. When enough people detach themselves, it destroys families, it destroys communities, and even society itself. I learned this the hard way. Early in my career, I loved pointing fingers at leaders. They should have done this, they should have done that, they didn't set me up for success, it's that person's fault, I don't know how I'm supposed to get this done. They didn't explain it fully, but a mentor stopped me and asked, okay, Natalie, how would you have done it? And I'd have an answer. There was no positive influence that I could have exerted at that time, but it was so easy for me to be really critical and so negative of the group that I was in. You see, a business is a group. And now imagine if all groups and even society at large started doing that. Everyone detaches, pointing fingers. Who's left to lead? Who's left to influence? If everyone pulls away, all that's left are critics. And critics never built anything. They just watch things decay and waste away. So detachment can feel safe for somebody who takes such little responsibility of their environment. And the problem is at scale, it accelerates the deterioration and the collapse of groups and societies. And at the end, it results in nobody taking responsibility for actually fixing what's broken. Any person can point out what's wrong. It is not challenging to point out all of the bad, all the challenges, all the reasons why somebody can't do something. But it's hard to look at something that isn't working and actually be able to put together a plan and execute on that plan to make it go right. If you want to be a positive force, you have to do this. Every time you catch yourself being critical or blaming someone, stop yourself and ask, what's one responsibility that I can take in this situation that makes it better? It could be mentoring a person at work, showing up for your family when it's uncomfortable, or even stepping up in your community. The moment you take responsibility, you stop being a part of the collapse and you start becoming part of the change. And one of the best things that you can do is to not speak negatively or be critical of somebody else's choices. You can keep all of those thoughts in your head, but spreading all of the problems and everything that's wrong just further perpetuates other people feeling like they can't help. So observe things that are wrong. I'm not saying that you should turn a blind eye to things that aren't going right. You can objectively see when something is going in the wrong direction, but you don't have to be critical of the person, talk negatively about them, or contribute to the demise of that situation, the demise of that group. In a business, if your boss is a jerk, you don't have to go tell all of your other team members how much of a jerk your boss is. What you should go do is actually have a productive conversation in order to change that environment, because that business cannot continue to be successful if all of the bosses in that business are a jerk and all the team members are wasting their time talking about that. What you can do is keep that to yourself, but figure out what you can do to contribute positively to the environment. Could you tell somebody that is more senior than your boss, hey, I've observed this behavior and I know that we're a place that believes in this value and has these aims, and I don't see that this person's behavior is contributing positively to the aims and purposes of the organization. That's you taking responsibility instead of you just being critical.